everybody. So I decided this next video is going to be my journey being diagnosed with epilepsy, and I decided that since it was a long journey, I guess, I'm not going to film it in one continuous video. I'm going to film it in different places because my diagnosis didn't all happen at once. It took like 7 to 8 years trying to figure out exactly what was going on. So I decided that I was going to film in different spots to kind of show that everything didn't happen at once, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, welcome to the video. Started out at soccer camp, I was 10 years old. During one of the practices, I started to feel really weird. I started to black out a little bit, like black spots were everywhere, and my heart was racing. My legs kind of felt tingly, and same with my arms, kind of like when your legs fall asleep. It's kind of like that feeling. And I was like, something's not right, I need to go tell my coach. I was like, hey, something's wrong, I need to call my mom. She didn't have my mom's phone number. And so she's like, you need to dial it in for me. And I can't really communicate. I couldn't hear very well at all. And by some miracle, we were able to contact my mom, and she came and picked me up. I was perfectly fine about 15 minutes after that. It was all good, just tired. Next day or two afterwards, we went to the doctor, and so went in there, and they asked me if I had any medical conditions, and then they asked me if any other medical history in your family, and I was like, so my dad has asthma, and so they had me explain my symptoms. They're like, oh, this sounds like asthma, here's an inhaler. Basically, it's this little puffer you put in your mouth, push the top part down, and then you go, and then the medication called albuterol sulfate will go into your airways, and it will expand them, and so it makes so you can breathe again. So they gave me an inhaler, and they're like, okay, you have asthma, and I was like, sweet. And yeah, so I was diagnosed with asthma at the age of 10, and stay tuned for the next part of the video. Bye. So after I was diagnosed with asthma, I thought that was gonna be it. So, 7th grade, I was in a musical. My mom came to pick me up. We were driving home, and all of a sudden I couldn't breathe, and I felt really nauseous, and my legs felt like they were gonna fall asleep. They were kind of like that tingly feeling. And all of me started feeling that way, and then I started to feel really hot and then really cold, and I got a really bad headache. I was like, Mom, something's up, and so we went straight back to the doctor's office, which was about 5 minutes away, and they saw me as soon as possible. They were like, okay, let's give you a breathing treatment. For those of you who don't know what a breathing treatment is, it looks like this. Okay, hello. So this is breathing treatment. It's also called the nebulizer. That's like the actual name, but most of us call it breathing treatment. This is the machine itself. Here's the tube. So this sends the oxygen into this little chamber, so I'll send it right here. This is the albuterol sulfate. So this is the chamber. Pour this stuff in there. So you pour it in there. It usually hits up to about this line right here. And then you just put this cap back on and you screw it. So this is where your mouth goes. And then you turn this on. The air will come up through here and take some medication. Bring it up here. You breathe it in. And then you breathe out some of the excess because you can't breathe 100% of it in. So it takes probably like 10 minutes to go through one of these breathing treatments. So if you're doing this, find something that won't make you bored. This is how loud it is. It's very loud. So yeah, that's how loud it is. So when you're done, there won't be any more medication in it. So yeah, that's what a nebulizer is, or a breathing treatment. Enjoy the rest of the video. And so they gave me a breathing treatment, and in the middle of this breathing treatment, one side of my body started to curl up. Like, my hands clenched like this. It hurt really, really bad. I couldn't move one side of my body, and I was freaking out. So they were like, gotta get you up to the emergency room right now. So we headed right for the emergency room. They got me admitted. So woke up from the hospital, and they're like, you need to go talk to your doctor. So we went to a new doctor. We'd stopped going to the first one. He said he was going to put me on a higher dosage of albuterol sulfate. And I had 1 or 2 asthma attacks that year, 7th grade year, and then I had one really, really big one in 8th grade. They called the ambulance. It was on the second to last day of school, and I remember this very well because everybody in my 8th grade yearbook was like, don't die. And I'm like, I don't plan on it. So we went back to our new one and we were like, hey, this isn't working, and so he referred us to an asthma specialist. That's where I will leave this video off at. See you in the next installment. This is why no one likes you, Ashley. Me and my asthma doctor decided that we should go do allergy testing to see if that had anything to do with it. So we did that, and it turns out that I am allergic to basically everything. Mold, plants, trees, animals, wood, which makes me laugh because my dad builds cabinets. So we thought that was triggering my asthma, and it does. So I started getting allergy shots. I'm still on them. They do help very, very well. That was towards the beginning of freshman year when I started going to him. That's when I started playing soccer. If any of you guys that were on my soccer team freshman year, then hello, and thanks for watching this. If not, then that's okay. So during soccer, I had roughly 10 asthma attacks during the soccer season, which was kind of scary. I felt bad for my teammates because it was really embarrassing. We had the ambulance called 4 or 5 times during that. Went to my asthma doctor and we're like, hey, this isn't working. So we started going from one medication that wasn't working, had more asthma attacks. The other one still had asthma attacks, still had them, even though we increased the dosage. And we increased the type of medication. Pretty soon I was on steroids, which I want to know why I took so many steroids and nothing's happened. Answer me that. Just kidding, I know steroids can stunt growth. Maybe that's what happened. Anyway, we almost got to the point where we were going to do a very serious route. So they were going to check my blood type and see if I had eosinophilic asthma, which basically is the most severe type of asthma. So they said white blood cells are protecting your immune system. If there are too many, it can cause your airways to become inflamed, leading to severe asthma attacks, leading to really bad lung damage. So, I didn't want that. So during that time, when I was taking all this asthma medication, I started to get really, really bad chest pain, enough that I felt like I was having a heart attack. It was terrible. So, told my asthma doctor this, and at this point we were seeing him probably once or twice every 2 weeks. He said that it could be a heart condition, so he sent me to a cardiologist. So yeah. Merry Christmas, everybody! So, I went to the cardiologist, and he had me put on a heart monitor called the King of Hearts. Had a heart monitor on for about a week or 2 weeks. During this time, so this was junior year, and I was having 3 within the span of 5 days. The heart doctor decided I needed to go do an x-ray to see if anything was wrong with my heart. Again, I was having really bad chest pains, and I was having asthma attacks a whole bunch. So I went and did some x-rays at the hospital, and we determined that everything was perfectly fine with my heart. I wasn't having any heart troubles at all. That did not explain any of the chest pain. So we determined that everything was fine with my heart. So he's like, maybe it's a neurological problem. So we went to a neurologist and we ran a whole bunch of tests. So we did tilt table, which is basically the most painful thing I've ever been through. Pretend my hand is the table. So they strapped me to this table, made sure none of my limbs were bent, because if they're not bent, there will be no circulation and you will pass out. So they did that, and then they tilted me forward like this and just waited until I passed out. I don't know how long it was, but it was the most painful thing ever. So we did that. Then I also did sleep-deprived EEGs. Brief summary, they hook these little electrodes all over my brain, and they let me sleep after being sleep-deprived for 24 hours. And they let me sleep, and then they'd measure the electronic activity in my brain. We also did some blood work, and finally the neurologist read all of the tests, and he's like, you have been having seizures for the past like 7 years. And I was like, what? We thought they were asthma attacks, but the symptoms mirrored those of a seizure. So I was diagnosed with epilepsy on May 11th, 2018. It was a long journey. I was on Keppra before. It was the worst. I switched medications, and I'm on Lamictal, and everything's all good. I haven't had a seizure in almost over a year. I'm hoping we keep it that way. That would be great. And yeah, Merry Christmas, everybody.